Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Ladies, picture this: a single weekly shot that silences the mid-weight battle, tames perimenopause, chaos, and reignites your fire. Today's topic is GLP-1 medications such as Ozempic, Wegovy, Manjaro, which are becoming a woman's secret weapon and exploding in popularity. But at what cost to your muscle, metabolism, and menopause power? Today, we dive deep into why midlife women can't get enough, the real fix for hormonal weight woes, and the hidden risks to your strength and long term vitality you must know. So don't miss this empowering reveal. Your body deserves the truth. Today, I'm joined by our resident nutritionist, Annie Gaudreault. She is a founder of Veev Health and Wellness. Annie is a nutritionist and women's health coach. Annie, welcome back to Empowered.
Nice to be here, Liz.
Okay, let's just dive in, because you and I had this discussion, and I was telling you that I was going out for dinner with so many different girlfriends, and each and every one of them are on a GLP-1. One's down 40 pounds, another one's down 20, another one 15. And I was actually starting to feel some FOMO, thinking, well, am I missing out on something? So let's just dive in. Why have GLP-1 medications suddenly become so popular, especially among women at midlife?
Well, they solve a big problem for women in midlife because so many women will experience weight gain at this time of life. It's very annoying. It's extremely disturbing and frustrating at times. So GLP-1s, they work really effectively, and women see results. So this is the primary reason, Liz, that women are turning to these tools to solve something that can be, really bothersome.
So, what problem are GLP-1s actually solving for women in perimenopause and menopause?
The number one reason and the number one efficacy is definitely the weight loss, right? We go from what we would call the pear shape to now seeing the weight gain more around apple, which is that weight around the belly. And this is actually a fat that is a lot more dangerous for women. It's called visceral fat. It's extremely inflammatory. It can cause a lot of issues for us. So we want to make sure that we get, a handle on that. GLP-1s are very effective for that. Number two is the food noise. A lot of women are experiencing a lot of food noise, this constant thinking about food and when's the next meal and could I grab a snack here and there? And it's extremely disturbing. So GLP-1s are very effective at turning off that switch immediately, providing so much relief.
So, with talking with some friends, they said, you could just buy one dose and have it last for 2 months, and you can actually monitor what you eat and your injections. Are GLP-1s addressing the root cause of midlife weight gain, or just managing symptoms?
They are definitely managing symptoms. Let's be honest here, right? They are helping us feeling fuller faster. It's signaling to the brain that we've had enough to eat. So we are not dealing with the hormonal shifts that are happening. Now, interestingly, Liz, is that research has shown that women that are both on GLP-1s combined with menopause hormone therapy see 20 to 25% more weight loss. So they are extremely powerful, in some cases, even more powerful than usual. But they are not addressing the root cause, which is this massive upheaval, biological change that is happening with the drop in both estrogen and progesterone.
I remember growing up, they were talking about the fact that you should never starve your body because it goes into starvation mode and you never end up losing any weight. Is this similar?
A little bit. I think that we have to remember that these are relatively new drugs beyond what they were designed for. Right? They were designed for those with type 2 diabetes. And when doctors saw the side effects of this drug, meaning the extreme weight loss, the drug companies woke up and went, ha, there is such a bigger market, of course, for this, right? So
So hold that thought,
lots of
Annie.
opportunity.
Just hold that thought. We'll be right back with more GLP-1 medication, so please don't go away. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's topic is GLP-1 medications. So, Annie, let's continue. Who is an appropriate candidate for GLP-1 medications, and who should think twice about this?
Those with obesity as a diagnosis are the perfect candidate for this. There are some very specific pancreas and gastro GI issues, diseases that are not conducive for GLP-1s. And your doctor will be able to tell you right away if you are a candidate or not. Of course, pregnant nursing mothers are also not a candidate. Where it gets a little bit more gray or nuance are all those individuals that are looking to lose some weight, but are definitely not in what we would call an obese category.
Okay, so are we at risk of overprescribing these medications to women who might not actually need them now?
I think that we live in a context where the resurgence of skinny is the message that women are receiving, that we should definitely lose the weight if we have a little bit of extra weight. So I think that there are a lot of forces at play here, Liz, that women are receiving that they should be losing that weight. Now, I also, in my practice, see how women are frustrated with this weight that is so challenging to lose at this time of life. So I think that there is a risk of potentially resorting to these drugs, because let's remember that they are drugs, at the cost of looking at other tools and other opportunities at this stage of life, which is not necessarily to look like what we used to when we were necessarily, 28 years old.
But I remember what all those magazines used to do to us when we were growing up, especially with the supermodels, with the perfect bodies, and they were all smoking and drinking a lot of coffee. What does this do for this next generation of young teenagers that are starting to grow up?
It really concerns me a lot. We've seen this over the last couple of years, extremely concerning images of emaciated women. We see that a lot from the Hollywood, world, and the models have always not necessarily been very healthy. But I believe that we had made some progress around the fact that women are not one size fits all. We are not all meant to be a certain size. And right now, the message that we are definitely receiving is skinny is the thing to be. And it's concerning because skinny does not mean healthy.
Okay, so let's move on then. How do GLP-1 medications interact with the hormonal shifts of perimenopause?
Well, they certainly fast track the weight loss when women are seeing, are on menopause hormone therapy. But from a typical, biology, all they do is making you lose the weight, but they're not changing anything else. Right? GLP-1 drugs are one tool that we have to treat weight gain. What's missing in the conversation are the healthy habits that we want to see at midlife for women, to make sure that we are eating well, that we are active, that we are promoting a healthy emotional, well-being with stress management, etc. So we are forgetting all the other pieces, Liz, when we're only focused on get me the drug because I just want to lose weight.
And it's interesting. You and I were talking maybe a week or two ago, and I was talking to you about maybe losing 7 pounds, very specific, and but doing it slowly. And one of the key things that you had mentioned to me was I was telling you that I was lifting weights, and you said that once a week wasn't enough. You wanted to see me do twice a week. Um, we're going to be going to break in about 30 seconds, but are a lot of women that are on GLP medications, are they actually lifting weights?
Well, not necessarily, because they are being prescribed these drugs and not given any other educational tools. We have to remember that most weight loss, any really big diets that are extreme, people lose 20 to 40% of that weight is lean mass, i.e., muscles.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
really dangerous, Liz.
It is dangerous. So please don't go away. We'll be right back with more. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's topic is GLP-1 medications. So, Annie, what happens to the muscle mass when women lose weight quickly on GLP-1s? And why does that matter at midlife?
So, the number one thing that people need to know is that women start to lose muscle mass in our 30s, right? We don't know, but this is happening. It's a slow, progressive loss at each decade. So, we need to work on this muscle mass really early on in midlife and perimenopause. If we look at this being 40s onward, we need to work at preserving that muscle mass, which helps us with our bones. It helps us in a way, if we think about it as a organ, if you want, of longevity. We can predict our health span and healthy lifespan, if you want, based on the quality and the health of our muscles. As we lose muscle mass, it's very dangerous because our metabolism slows down, and from an independence and longevity standpoint, it can be disastrous. So it really concerns me that women are not necessarily protecting a muscle while on GLP-1s.
So, I want to dedicate the rest of this segment to this one question. Can these medications impact long term metabolic health for better or for worse?
Well, the answer is both, Liz. So there's a lot of benefits. A lot of research has been done and very conclusive that we can see massive improvements on cardiovascular risks. This is important for women because cardiovascular risks are the number one killer for women. Heart attack, strokes, etc. We also see with GLP-1s big improvements on blood sugar levels, prediabetes, diabetes. We also see improvements on things like fatty liver disease, very common, and kidney health. These are extremely precious organs, and their health is critical for our longevity. So these are really, really good benefits. We're also starting to see some cognitive benefits. More research will be coming out in the next 18 months, I'm sure, but already there's a lot to be very, very grateful for in terms of the GLP-1 benefits. Now, every drug also has side effects, and there are definitely some danger. We talked about the muscle mass loss. This is one of the most important thing. We also start to see the fact that as people stop these drugs, Liz, people regain the weight and they lose the benefits, the metabolic benefits that they gained while under these drugs. So I think that it's really important for people to be aware of this phenomenon. We're also starting to see the psychology of it where the pleasure centers are affected. So people are starting to report that, kind of they feel a little bit more blah because the signaling, and it's the same signaling that makes us crave food, alcohol, etc. These pleasure centers, it's turned off. So people are starting to feel a little bit, well, not a very scientific term here, Liz, but a little bit meh, right? Where you're losing a lot of your zest. So I think that it's really important to understand that with these drugs are potential risks, There's severe, potentially GI tract also discomfort associated with these drugs, from very extreme constipation to cramps to acid reflux to bloating. These are not without any side effects. A lot of the drug companies will say these side effects diminish over time, and we see that with some people. But there are also some very serious effects, side effects of potential pancreatitis. It's very serious. Anyone that is experiencing any severe GI tract issues should get these checked right away, because these are very serious um, health outcomes potentially. So I think that we need to understand that these are not without consequences when we are not teaching people all the other tools, lifestyle tools that need to be done and done at midlife.
It's interesting because you and I were reading this article and they were talking about the fact that food just doesn't taste the same anymore. And I was listening to a couple of guys in the office and they were saying one of their friends loves scotch, but just cannot take that taste anymore. So please don't go away. We'll be right back with more GLP-1 medication updates. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's topic is GLP-1 medications, and I'm joined by our resident nutritionist, Annie Gaudreault. She's the founder of Veev Health and Wellness, and Annie is a nutritionist and women's health coach. So, Annie, let's continue. What are the biggest nutritional mistakes women make when they are on GLP-1s?
Well, the biggest ones we see are lack of protein, fiber, and overall vitamins and minerals. Simply not eating enough and not having a really, really well balanced diet. And the consequences can lead to something like, losing your hair. We see that a lot. And of course, one of the consequences is the muscle preservation, unfortunately. So there's a bit of a double whammy at play here.
So, why is protein intake and strength training non negotiable if someone chooses this route?
Because to preserve muscle, we need protein, and just for the repair and the recovery part of it. But in order to preserve just the muscle itself, we need the strength training to be doing that. Cardiovascular activity is wonderful, but is not going to give us anything in terms of muscle preservation. So we need to be working really very much at at keeping that muscle mass, because the intake of food is so reduced as people have no appetite. They don't want to have a lot of protein. They're satiated so quickly that the portions are, really, really small. So they're not getting enough of their protein. So it's the muscle that gets broken down as nutrient in lieu of protein in the diet. And we also know that women at midlife are at risk of osteoporosis, and it's strength training that also protects the bone. So it really acts on so many levels. That strength training becomes non-negotiable.
So, Annie, can relying on appetite suppression disconnect women from their body's natural hunger signals?
100%. And I think that it's difficult to understand that hunger is not just a physical phenomenon, driven by hormones like ghrelin, for example. Walk into someone's home and they just bake cookies and you want one.
Yeah.
Right. This is how we are wired. If you get upset by a situation, you may want to have, a few crisps. You know, Hunger is impacted by so many things. It's not just physical, it's emotional and it's mental. And understanding our bodies, understanding how we react, is all part of this process. GLP-1s turn off that process completely.
Okay, so let's go to the next level. What is the psychological impact of suddenly not thinking about food at all for women who have struggled for so many years?
It can be so liberating for some women. Some women in my practice will report that it's the first time in their life that they can finally they have just greater mental bandwidth, if that makes sense. They can finally breathe better. And they feel less shame because there was a lot of guilt around this whole like, what is wrong with me? Why am I always thinking about, when's my next meal? So it can be very liberating and freeing for these women and a really good tool for them on their journey. I think that what's the other thing that we need to look at is GLP-1s are just one tool in a toolbox for our health. And sadly, I don't think that there's enough focus on the other tools as part of our journey to feel good in our bodies and to be as strong as possible.
Okay, less than 30 seconds. Are there cases where GLP-1s can actually be a powerful tool when used alongside a comprehensive health strategy?
It's actually very helpful for people with addiction, Liz. So a lot of my clients will say, geez, I don't feel like that, third glass of wine. I can barely have one now. So there is something to be said for, being able to manage addiction that way. Again, I think that it would be good to go to the root cause.
Thank you so much, Annie. Annie wants you to know these medications can change the conversation, but they shouldn't replace it because the most important work at midlife is still learning how to support your body in a way that lasts for decades ahead. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Bye for now.